At the break of dawn, deep in the heart of a vast forest, a lone wolf limped through the undergrowth. Its leg bore a deep wound that had refused to heal for weeks. The pain was relentless, and its once mighty stride had become a struggle. In the wild, there's little room for weakness. Injured and unable to hunt, the wolf faced the harsh reality of survival. But on this day, fate had something unexpected in store. Not far from the struggling wolf, a man lived alone in harmony with nature. A retired veterinarian, he had chosen solitude over the chaos of city life, finding peace in the wilderness. That morning, as he sipped his tea, something unusual caught his attention: a faint rustling in the distance. Curious, he stepped outside to investigate. At first, he thought it was a stray dog. But as he stepped closer, he realized it was a wolf, injured, exhausted, and clinging to life. He hesitated. Approaching a wild animal, especially a predator, was no small risk. Despite the risks, the man couldn't ignore the wolf's suffering. Gathering his courage and supplies, he approached the animal slowly, hoping to offer help. With soft, soothing words, the man tried to calm the wolf. "Easy now," he whispered. "I'm here to help." The wolf's golden eyes watched him, wary but too weak to resist. Every movement was deliberate, every action gentle. He cleaned the wound with warm water, removing debris that had festered for days. The wolf flinched, its instincts warning it to flee, but something in the man's presence kept it grounded. That evening, the wolf stayed near the cabin, its exhaustion outweighing its fear. The man brought it food and water, keeping a respectful distance. He knew trust was something to be earned, not demanded. Over the next few days, a quiet routine developed. The man would check the wolf's wound, ensuring the bandage stayed clean and dry. Each day, the wolf grew stronger, its golden eyes filled with a mix of suspicion and gratitude. A bond began to form. The wolf, once a wary stranger, now lingered near the man's cabin, watching his every move. The man often spoke to it, sharing stories as if it were an old friend. One morning, the man noticed the wolf testing its leg, gingerly placing weight on it. It was a small victory. In the heart of the wilderness, survival is a daily struggle. For one wolf, the struggle had grown unbearable. Its wounded deep gash along its leg refused to heal, leaving it weak and vulnerable. The once proud creature now limped through the forest, its spirit dimming with each passing day. Exhausted and dehydrated, the wolf collapsed near a stream. It tried to drink, but even this small act required more strength than it could muster. Alone and desperate, it seemed as though its time was running out. Not far from the wolf's resting place, a man lived alone in a small cabin. He had chosen this life of solitude, seeking peace and escape from the noise of the world. But his connection to nature was about to be tested in ways he never imagined. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the man noticed something unusual: tracks in the dirt near his cabin. They were larger than any he'd seen before, and they told a story of pain and struggle. Curious, he decided to follow them. Following the tracks led him to a heart-wrenching sight: the wolf, lying near the stream, barely able to move. Its leg was swollen, its wound raw and festering. For a moment, the man hesitated. This was a wild animal, after all. But something in its eyes, a plea for help, moved him to action. The man approached cautiously, his every step measured. He spoke softly, his words meant to soothe rather than startle. "Hey there, buddy, easy now." "I won't hurt you," the wolf growled weakly, its body tense but too exhausted to flee. Knowing the wolf needed immediate care, the man rushed back to his cabin. He grabbed a first aid kit, fresh water, and some leftover meat. When he returned, he placed the food a safe distance away and stepped back, allowing the wolf to approach on its own terms. Trust takes time, especially with a creature as wary as a wolf. Each day, the man returned, bringing food and sitting nearby. Slowly, the wolf began to understand that this stranger meant no harm. Its growls softened, and its golden eyes watched him with cautious curiosity. After days of patience, the wolf allowed the man to come closer. Gently, he cleaned the wound with warm water, removing the dirt and infection. The wolf flinched but didn't pull away, as though it understood the man's intentions. For the first time in weeks, the wound was cared for. In the days that followed, a bond began to form. The wolf stayed near the cabin, resting and regaining its strength. Each morning, the man changed its bandages, speaking to it in a calming voice. Bit by bit, the wolf's health improved. With every passing day, the wolf grew stronger. Its limp began to fade, and it started to follow the man as he went about his daily chores. Together, they formed an unlikely companionship, man and wolf, united by kindness. For the man, helping the wolf wasn't just an act of compassion, it was a reminder of the bond that can exist between humans and the wild. He realized that sometimes, even the fiercest creatures need a helping hand. One crisp morning, the wolf stood at the forest's edge, its strength fully restored. It turned back, locking eyes with the man one last time. In that moment, no words were needed. Their connection had transcended language. As the wolf disappeared into the wilderness, the man felt a mix of sadness and pride. He had saved a life, and in doing so, he had been forever changed. In the quiet of his cabin, he realized that the forest would never feel the same without his wild companion.